Thank you, dear Marco. Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra. And I apologize for this technical failure. And thank you very much for having me. First of all, I would like to thank the Hellenic American Chamber of Commerce, and especially Marcos and Alexandra, for always being there for us, and for Greece, of course. You know, as a diplomat, people often think of my life as an endless wine tasting experience. Έτσι, Marco. Something which I can assure you is far away from real life, although I have to accept that in my career, I have been fortunate enough to have tasted some of our country's finest wines. My mission here is to make even more Americans understand what I'm talking about. And you are contributing to that very successful. Coming to our day's event, I realized that it is difficult to speak about taste in a webinar, of course. How do you explain the sensation of flavor through the screen? It is quite challenging. Nevertheless, apart from the experience of taste, it is very important that we keep and enhance the knowledge of this very industry. We need to know the merits of our own Greek products, as well as the potential, the huge potential of our winemaking industry. The facts, Marco and dear friends, speak for themselves. Greece, our country, is one of the oldest wine producers in the world. We know that. We just need to advertise it a little bit more to the world. We are also one of the most competitive players in Europe, but that is never enough in the globalized wine trade. Wine exports is an industry worth of around $36 billion, and European countries have around 3/4 of the market's global share. Availability, quality, and price will continue to define our place in the international market. We score pretty well in most categories, but we haven't been good enough in making a considerable impact in this market. The United States is the largest consumer of wine products, the largest importer, and the 4th largest producer. For decades, Greek wine had been absent from this market, unfortunately, and not only from the racks of high-end restaurants, but the shelves of average wine shops as well. And we know that very well because we have seen the progress made in the meantime. So we have seen that has changed, although there is still plenty of room for improvement. Americans, our friends, are now starting to become familiar with our own varieties, although I have to admit it will be very intriguing to see a customer pronouncing Αγιοργίτικο, for example. Έτσι, Μάρκο, για πες το εσύ.
Αγιοργίτικο.
Bravo. So we are off to a good start in terms of publicity as well. More and more wine critics and connoisseurs write about Greek indigenous varieties, often recreating beautiful images of the serene Mediterranean landscape. Closing my remark, dear friends, I would like, first of all, to thank the commercial office of the consulate here in New York, and especially Yorgos Michailidis and Vasilis Liveris, who are doing a tremendous job. And I would say that if we wish to appeal to the wine world, we need to think in the same way we cultivate our grapes. You can never go straight to harvesting. First you plant, then you grow, and only in the end you reap the benefits of your efforts. It takes time, but it is the safest way to build quality and endurance. And you know, they say, this is my last word, because I don't want to take your time, They say the vine, is extremely adaptable to new environments. I'm sure our winemakers will prove equally resilient. I'm pretty sure about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Koutras. I'd like to now ask Trade Commissioner Michailidis to say a couple words.
Of course. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Yes. I am very glad for that, because we had a few issues with my audio a couple of days ago. So, yeah, actually, there are a couple of things that I'd like to say as far as the Greek wine exports to the US are concerned. The things that I want to point out are the following. For a very long period of time, Greek wine producers were trying to compete in the global market by producing and promoting international varieties, as for example, Chardonnay, Sauvignon, Pinot Grigio, so forth, so on. And it was almost like 10, 15 years ago that they realized that you cannot compete with this kind of mainstream varieties in the global market, because you're not actually putting something new into the market. You cannot compete in these varieties, for example, with the French or the Chileans or the Argentinians or the Australians. So it was like 10, 15 years ago that Greek producers realized that they have to promote in the global market, into the US market in particular, the indigenous Greek varieties. It was at that point that they started launching they launched an effort to cultivate these new indigenous wine varieties in Greece, as for example, Assyrtiko, Agorgitiko, as the Consul General said, Mavrodaphne, Nemea, so forth, so on. That was the one thing, because we realized that you have to bring something new into the market. You have to actually attract the global consumer, be it the American consumer or the Canadian consumer or the Australian or the Chinese or whatever consumer, to try something new, to try something that will genuinely remind him of Greece. And this is the reason why they started this effort. And now we've reached the point that I would say that most of the Greek wines that are exported globally are of indigenous species, indigenous varieties. That's one thing. And another thing that I'd like to say is that there are a couple of promotional campaigns for Greek food and Greek wines that are in progress right now in the US. But I can say with great confidence that the most successful of all by far is the one involving Greek wine. It is a promotional campaign that has been going on for the last 8 years or so. The name of the campaign is Wines of Greece. That's the name of the campaign. It is being implemented by the so-called ΔΟΑΟ, Εθνική Διεπαγγελματική Οργάνωση Αμπέλου και Ίνου Ελλάδος, for the Greek-speaking among us, which is actually the Association of Greek Wine Producers of Greece. And they have been making these tremendous efforts for the last almost 8 years that the campaign has been going on. And we get, I would say, positive results out of this, but I can say that there's also a lot of room for improvement. Now, what do I mean by saying that? I'd like to point out to certain figures to substantiate what I'm talking about. The good thing is that we have been witnessing a steady growth in the volume and value of Greek wine exports to the US for the last, I would say, 5 years or so. To be more specific, wine exports, the value of Greek wine exports to the US amounted to almost 11.5 million euros in 2015. And now this value has reached the 15 million euros mark. This constitutes a rise by almost 27%. So in the last 5 years only, we have witnessed an increase in the Greek exports of almost 27%. 27%. This is a good result. On the other hand, we also have to point to the fact that, unfortunately, the share of Greek wine exports to the US remains very limited, taking into consideration the steady rise in the overall wine consumption to the US. Right now, the total value of wine imports in the US is almost 6 billion euros, 45 to 50% of which is French wine. So the French wine, it actually dominates the US market as far as the imports are concerned. I'm not talking about local production, which is primarily based in California, in Napa Valley. But as far as the imports are concerned, the French imports actually dominate the market. And then you have the wines from Italy, almost 25%, and then other major players like, for example, New Zealand, Australia, and Chile. Unfortunately, the percentage of the Greek wines in the overall picture of wine imports in the US is very, very limited. It has been growing, but it's still very limited. To be more specific, the overall market share, the market share in the overall wine imports in the US was only 0.17% in 2007. And 10 years later, in 2017, it was only 0.23%. So in a 10 years period, it grew from 0.17 to 0.23%. So it actually depends whether we want to see the glass half full by saying that we have been witnessing a 27% rise in the value in the last 5 years, or whether we can say that we can see the glass half empty, taking into consideration the fact that our market share in the overall wine imports remains very meager, very small. My personal point of view in this is that we are doing a great job, because we cannot overlook the fact that the wine imports have grown significantly. The value has grown significantly. But on the other hand, we need to intensify our efforts. We need to intensify our efforts because this is a big and growing market. The overall wine consumption in the US has been growing steadily. 2019 was the only year that we saw a stagnation in the market. There was no increase in the market. We primarily attribute that to the fact that young people do not consume wine as much as the previous generations did. In any case, the truth of the matter is that this is a very, very big market, and it has a huge potential. And I think we have to build upon what we have already achieved in the last 8 years, meaning that we have to intensify the efforts that the Greek wine producers are making to further penetrate into the US market. As far as the varieties are concerned, I would say that by far the #1 variety is Assyrtiko. And that is because the Greek Wine Producers Association used Assyrtiko as the spearhead to penetrate into the US market. And that's the reason why this is happening is because Assyrtiko is, of course, a wine, and it is more easily consumed. On the other hand, red wines are not so easily consumed in the sense that you need to consume them in a meal, in a lunch, or in a dinner with other people. White wine, on the other hand, can consume by the glass, by just sitting by the glass, by the bar with a couple of friends. So #1 wine right now is Assyrtiko, and then you have the other varieties that following suit, like Mavrodafni, Xenomavro, Agorgitiko, so forth, so on. One other thing that I'd like to say and actually stop at this point, to give the floor to other participants and speakers, is that most of the Greek wine right now is being consumed in the food service. By saying food service, I mean, of course, restaurants, bars, clubs, cafes, hotels, so forth, so on. And this is the case because you have a very strong footprint of Greek Americans that actually own food service properties in the US. Primarily restaurants, bars, cafes, also hotels in certain regions in the US. So this actually is a very, very fertile ground for Greek wine producers in the US to launch their products, to put the products in. So these are a couple of things that I'd like to say and point out to. And of course, I am at your disposal for any questions that you might have to ask. Thank you very much. And I want to thank very much Marcos Drakotos, the president, for a wonderful event. And also Alexandra for inviting me to be on board. And I'm looking forward to similar very beautiful events in the near future. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I'd just like to note that Greece is very well represented by yourself and Dr. Koutras, as are the Greeks here in the United States. And we thank you both for your incredible service.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I just want to make note. I saw a friend of mine popped up on the screen, Edouard Bourgeois, who worked with Michael Madrigal, was a sommelier at Café Bouloud. So hopefully we'll get to hear from Edouard as we move along. And I just want to mention that we have Anamnesis and Greek News with us. So that's wonderful. We look forward to seeing some wonderful things written about the Greek wine industry. So without further ado, Andrea, please take us, Mytikas, the nose of the gods.
Thank you very much. So thank you everyone for, if this is your second time on our journey. For those that don't know who I am, I'm Andrea Anglisis, one of the principals of Athene Importers, which is one of the oldest family-owned and operated importers of products from Greece and Cyprus into the US. Just a quick note, and I'm not that I'm trying to rush anybody. We do have, I think I've seen all three of our producers that were tasting their wines tonight on with us. So just in the sensitivity of the fact that it's really late in Greece, and especially one of them is still harvesting, we're just, I just want to be mindful that it's practically midnight there. So that's all I'm going to say on that, but they're Greeks, they go out anyway. So let's begin. For those that might not be, oh, well, hold on, now I've got to get my thing. There we go. So obviously those for who don't really understand or know, obviously everybody knows Greece, but this is just a little bit, if you were here last time, forgive me, but I wanted to bring back some of the original slides in order for some of our newer participants just to understand a few things. As Greece is part of the EU and we have northern land borders only, the country is very much surrounded by sea and it's a huge influence. Just as we were also talking last time together about the wines from the islands, even though we are now in the Peloponnese, water is still a huge influence in all of the areas that we are talking about. We do have the 10th largest coastline in the world. And again, that salinity and the minerality is something that we're really going to be tasting as well in all of the wines that we have today. So the majority of the country is, we're under the Mediterranean climate. And we are a very mountainous country. So as much as everybody always thinks about sun, beach, and fun, there's a lot of mountains, and there are a lot of wineries and vineyards that are at higher altitudes, and that is what really does set us apart from a lot of other parts of Europe. Now, this at a glance, this is not meant to be a lecture and be boring. I just wanted to tell you that we are focusing on the Peloponnese and Athens today. So those are two of the largest. When you combine them, they represent almost half of the total production of the country. And just because it's more of the most acreage under vine, but that's where you used to see a lot more of the production coming from. Also proximity to Athens, where a lot of people lived. So that's where you see a lot of wines that come into this country tend to be from, and that's where we're focusing today. And then, with our wine laws, just for those to get a bit of an understanding, if you're not familiar with the way Greek wine laws work, they are based on the French appellation system. So originally, because they thought that when the Greeks were trying to figure out which appellation system made the most sense, they basically said, okay, the French have figured this out after centuries, And so the way that they work when you look at these labels too, and the bottles, you will see either most of them, they're going to be PDO, which is protected designation of origin, which is your appellation of origin. And then we have PGI, protected geographical indication, which if you're familiar with, for example, out of Italy, IGT, that is a more regional category. One's not better than the other. They're just very different. And of course, when you're looking at your bottles, you will see a few that have the pink strips that are underneath the capsule and over the cork. And those represent the appellations. So, and that's a numbered system, but I can let the winemakers talk about that. We do have, as I said, our wines are basically separated into two categories: quality wine and table wine. But don't take table wine with a grain of salt, because that is also where there's a lot of experimentation happening. So you see a lot of producers that are working outside of the appellation parameters are in this table wine category. And so don't think of it as the cheap stuff, because there's actually some really interesting stuff that's going on in there. And then of course we have the appellation by tradition. And today we are tasting a Retsina, which I'm really happy about because it's actually a really cool one too. So I know a lot of people, especially when you deal with Americans, they think everything is Retsina and they think that's all we produce. But as we know, that's a very small amount of our total production in the country. So these are where our climates are in Greece. We do have 3 distinct climate types: Mediterranean, Alpine, and temperate. And we are basically going to be talking about the Mediterranean climate that encompasses the Peloponnese and Attica, which is the prefecture where Athens is. Now, I've always loved these two maps because a lot of times people don't seem to conceptualize where Greece is in the world of winemaking. And so for those who have friends that might not be familiar with wines from Greece, this is always fun because when you lay the world flat, it's like, okay, if your friends are drinking wines from southern Italy, from Sicily, from Spain and Portugal, we're on the same lines, in the same latitude lines. So therefore it is, it's not a far stretch for people that like those types of wines to be able to cross over into the world of Greece. And what I always love is this particular slide where Napa is on the same latitude line as pretty much just the northern tip of the Peloponnese. So not that we're not trying to compete with Napa, but what's kind of fun is that when you put the world flat, Greece and Napa are on the same line. So just food for thought on that. And then if you flip the world upside down, you end up in Australia. So let's start first with Athens. I am going to also bring in Maria Marcu, who is one of the family members from the Marcu winery. She'll also be speaking as well. And then we're going to be tasting their 2 wines. So just to recap, we're going to taste first the Sabatiano, and then we will be tasting their Retsina. So everybody has whoever has their wines, hopefully they have them open and they have them in glass. So this is where we're going to have some fun. What I always wanted to start with too is that, of course, we have such a huge and rich wine history. You know, this dates back centuries. And wine has always been an integral part of the Greek culture, of civilization. And there is evidence of wine production dating back thousands of years. Of course, we're the oldest press in Crete. Actually, we discussed that in our last educational class. And so this particular influence about wine has been ingrained in our systems. And we always have wine with a meal, for example. It's not that Greeks are really out there drinking wine to get drunk, but it's the fact that there is so much history behind wine in Greece makes it even more special and unique for us. And then in terms of the modern times, you know, there have been a lot of changes ever since the wars. Of course, my parents started in the business in the 1970s. So we've seen the evolution of the Greek wine industry from after the wars to today, and it's been fantastic. It's a very interesting thing to have lived through, even for me, because I came involved in 1997 full time. So the wineries, though, that we are going to be talking about today have been established. Actually, we have with us today, and of course, Labis is at the end, one of the oldest wineries in Greece since 1864. But right now, we are going to start in Attiki, in Athens, and talk about Sabatiano, which is a grape variety that for decades, and even up until very, very recently, was always just kind of, I don't want to say looked down upon, but I don't want to say, I think it was just really not very well understood, because it's a vigorous grape variety. And it's a grape variety that, if you're not very careful in the vineyards, can yield wines that are just okay. So you really need to have work in the vineyards, careful attention to detail, and also work with their fermentation techniques and also in winemaking in order to have the most interesting and unique wines that come out of these grapes, the wines that come from these grapes. And I do find that these wines will actually do are very interesting with some age on them. So the fact that we're not drinking super fresh is actually, for me, the best thing ever, because it shows the potential of what the are for these wines. And what's also kind of cool is that Athens is one of the only, it's pretty much the only city in it's a European capital that you can walk to a vineyard if you wanted to. So I don't think there's any other city in Europe that can actually boast that particular, you know, little nugget of information. So that's where we are with that. Our terroir. So Аттική has the mountains that surround it on the northern side that go down into, that end up in a very, like a gently sloping plain that ends up at the water. So you do have a very good exchange of air between the mountainous cooler air and the warmer air from the ocean, from the sea. So you will always have an exchange of air, which is good, of course, because you need that in order to have the leaves to move. It reduces the need for any sort of spraying. There is not that many pests that reside in the Athenian vineyards. So I'm not trying to say everything's natural, but the fact that these are grapes that have adapted and are used to warmer temperatures, and the fact that they don't require as much maintenance on that side is something that is quite important as well. So the majority of the soil is very chalky. There are some clay and loam deposits. So what that will do is also give a minerality as well. And the best Sabatianos tend to be in goblets. So when I will show you some goblets, because I have a few of those pictures for us as well. So here is where we are in terms of Аттική and Athens and what we're talking about. It's actually kind of cool where the Markou winery is. We can actually visit right from the airport if and when we ever get to travel, because for those of us that don't have Greek passports, we're stuck here until we can do that safely. So here is the Markou winery. Maria, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can everybody hear me? Hi.
I think we can. Can everybody hear Maria? Okay, cool.
I guess so.
Okay, so if you would like to start, talk a little bit about the winery and the history and all that fun stuff.
Okay, so we're a winemaking family. We go back 4 generations since the beginning of the 20th century. My great-grandfather was the first to plant his first Sabatiano vines. They used to make wine back then very modestly, the traditional way. He would sell his wine in downtown Athens. He got to be very popular with his wine all over the blackout taverns. So in 1983, my father and uncle, they founded the family's contemporary winemaking unit. This one?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So you will be tasting Sabatiano. Andrea covered very well everything about Sabatiano, and thank you.
These are the goblets. How old are these vines? If I'm correct from what Vasily told me, these are the 60-plus-year-old vines that you guys have outside the winery, right?
Yes, yes. You cannot find a lot older vines in Athens because of the phylloxera disease that hit during the 50s, 60s, around there. So most of the vines are the eldest vines. Most of them are 60 years old.
Cool. Let me see if I have some more fun pictures. So these are all Sabatiano vines for everyone to see. And as the grape variety, Michael, if you want to hop in too at this point, what are your thoughts about how Sabatiano is tasting as well? I get those more of like the, you know, a little bit more, not the banana, but like that ripe fruit. But I'm getting the acidity and the minerality.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it aromatically kind of neutral. Like it doesn't seem quite aromatic as a lot of other grape varieties like Moscafilero, for example. It's more showing the earthy aromas. You know, there's something quite, but also phenolic about the aromas of this wine. It seems to be more of a sort of a phenolic, for lack of a better word, that I get on the aromas. And it's intense wine. You know, I like it. It seems to be very, very sturdy for a white wine. You know, it's got really tight structure, lots of dry extract, and very, very, I mean, somewhat misleading. Like you think of it as a simple white wine to drink outside and, you know, not think about it, but it demands attention. It demands my attention when I drink it. And I mean that as a very high compliment.
I've found that I've been tasting the older vintages of Sabatiano, and it amazes me. Like even 5 or 6 years old, they're still vibrant and lively, and there's still a lot of acidity. And I almost feel bad in the old days when everyone's like, Sabatiano, it's not a grape that's going to be able to, develop. And I think it got a really bad rap for a long time. And I think that you're able to see now that there is the phenolics. Yes, it makes it a little bit, for me, a little bit richer. But with food, this is a great pairing as well. So that's where it's kind of fun, I think, in that respect.
Yeah, I have a question about as you mentioned, Maria and Andrea, the soils are somewhat infertile because of the stones there. Is it very difficult to grow other grape varieties in these vineyards?
No, it's not. But Sabatiano is certainly more resilient in these conditions. Most of the other grape varieties are more fragile. And so, yeah, you can grow, but Sabatiano is the easiest to grow.
Right.
I also think that has to do with the rainfall as well there, Michael, because since there is no irrigation in the area, I think a lot of other grapes will get very stressed, whereas Sabatiano adapted well to soils there. I mean, I know, we've tasted other ones, but I think that it's just like, this is like, it's like, wheelhouse is to be in the area around Athens.
Well, that makes me like this wine even more, to be honest with you, because it's truly a wine of terroir. It's truly the best grape to grow in this region because the vine has adapted to the heat and the hot summers of that region, and to be able to survive without a lot of rainfall. You know, it's really one with the place, the vines at this point. And
sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
No, just a little information about the grape. It's so resilient, which is funny for me to mention after mentioning the phylloxera. But it's very resilient to disease, and it's often used all over Greece. Has always been used all over Greece, alongside other varieties to protect them and shield them from disease. So it's also very resilient to disease.
And how long back has Sabatiano been planted in Greece? Is it like 1,000 years? Do they have any information about that?
It's debatable. It's considered to be one of the eldest. It is, well, Retina, we will talk about Retina afterwards, but it's the tradition of Retina goes back many years, like millennia. So Sabatiano is the grape variety from which Retina is traditionally made from. So it makes sense to just, to think that Sabatiano has been here a long time.
Probably, it probably has mutated too, but this, I don't know how far they go back. Maybe if Leonidas is on, he might know because he's also been involved. We'll see. We can always find that out. That's a very good question.
Cool.
So are we ready to?
Delicious.
Any questions about from the group before we move on to Retsina? And don't hold your nose at Retsina, everyone.
No, this is great Retsina. This is one of the best Retsinas I've ever had.
That's why I put it out there. Michael, the amount of time that as a, you know, on the sales side, that people will tell me, and I'm not trying to poo-poo the Retsina, Maria, because this is like this is a really funny story, is that everyone tells me, don't bring me Retsina, it's terrible. I don't have the stuff that you want to clean the floor with.
Yeah.
I tell them, I'm like, do me a favor. You don't have to like it, but you have to try it. Because if everyone's going to think, you know, and of course, you know, they think, oh, Greek wine is Retsina, which we know that it's less than 10% of the total production from the country. At least try a good one. And if you don't like it, I respect it, but you at least have to try one, and if it is what it is. And every time I've done that to people, they're like, damn it, I actually like this. So that's kind of fun. That's always been my fun thing with Retsina, just throwing it out in the bag and going. And, you know, if we're going to embrace the 800-pound elephant in the room, Retsina is a really unique product. And of course, it's only applicable to Greece. That's why we have our appellation of tradition, which means that there is no other EU country that can make Retsina and call it Retsina. And it does date back to the Minoan civilization. So when we're talking about the amphora, when they were lining the amphora with pine resin, that's how this whole thing started. And then, of course, when you bring it into modern day times, when you had the barrels that were coated with pine resin, again, it continued in that particular fashion.
Yeah.
But as we're tasting, Retsina, though, is super fun.
Yeah.
This is a food wine, because this and a killer curry, it will knock it out of the park every time.
You know what I think of when I smell this and I taste it? I want like lamb with rosemary and lemon, with like tons of rosemary on the lamb. Flavor. Yeah, because I think this would be perfect with that.
Now, Maria, could you please talk a little bit about how because I just want to back it up before I give it back over to Maria, is that, you know, in the past we did have a lot of people that produced really crappy white wine, and they were resonating the hell out of it in order to be able to pass it off as Retsina.
Right.
What we're tasting, though, and Maria, hopefully I'm saying this correctly, the same base wine that we've tasted in the 100% stainless steel Sabatiano is the same
exactly
in the Retsina. So we're starting with a superior base product before we do anything to it. And I think that's quite important to mention as well. But if you could talk a little bit about how you guys produce the Retsina.
Well, each producer has his own little fun recipe, let's say. We have my great-grandfather's recipe for making Retsina. You add a specific amount of pine resin in cloth before fermentation, and you leave it there for a couple of days. And then you extract it, and that's it.
So it's like making a very large pot of tea.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's like infusion in some sense. You shouldn't put too much. You shouldn't leave it for too long, because the point is for the wine to still taste like wine and have the additional tones of the pine to complement it.
Yeah. You know, Maria, I have to say, the grape Sabatiano, in its somewhat neutrality, works as a really great ingredient to the pine resin. It works very well together.
That is true. That is a very good point.
Yeah.
And
Maria, what do you like Retsina with, personally?
I like fried fish with Retsina, to tell you the truth. I like the acidity of the Retsina. Just balances the oiliness of the great fried fish and the fried calamari, which I have associated in my mind. It's a personal.
Sure.
More personal.
You know what's also kind of fun recently? Obviously, it's more pre-COVID, but Retsina has started to become a very interesting ingredient in cocktails.
Yes.
Yeah, we're starting to see more Retsina-based cocktails happening, and places that I never would have thought I would be selling Greek wine to, let alone Retsina. It's because the bartenders are finding are developing these very unique recipes that are that more herbal, like you were talking about, Michael, with the infusion of thyme and rosemary, the more pungent herbs. This is like a little floater on top, has become interesting.
To brighten up the drink. somewhat.
Exactly, to give it like, elevate the acid.
Right, right. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that, is there wisdom in that pairing with, pine resin and white wine? Like, do you think they were correct in creating that? Do you think it works to this day? Do you think it's like a universal, or at least a Greek sort of flavor, passionate Greek thing that this has been invented? Do you see the wisdom of it today?
For me, it's a great match because they're two beautiful plants. Let's say it's the vine and the pine. They rhyme. So they really embody the nature of Greece and Attica, specifically. So I think it's a very natural mix, a match, a very natural match.
That's cool. When I was, I went to Greece a few times, and the one time I went, I was in, the Côte de Meleton? And I was in a vineyard, and there were pine trees, and you could see the vineyard workers cut little notches in the tree to get the pine sap in order to make their homemade Retsina.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whee! That could be fun.
It's do it yourself.
That is very commonplace for us growing up in Attica. It's very, very commonplace. We grew up with this. A lot of people make their own wine, so it's very commonplace.
Cool. Yeah, great stuff. This is my first time tasting your wines, Maria. I've never had them before, and I think they're great. And I'm interested. What other do you make red wine as well?
Yes, we make a Georgitico. We have vineyards also in Nemea.
Okay.
Actually, they have a biodynamic Sabatiano that has no sulfites added too, in a very specific parcel. It's very cool stuff.
Yes, we have been exploring Sabatiano extensively for the past 15 years. We make a biodynamic, like Andrea said, natural wine without sulfites, which goes very well and it ages. What really has amazed me with Sabatiano is the fact that it ages amazingly. And I have let's say a soft spot for older wines. So I'm really, really proud and pleased with Sabatiano. It has amazing potential for aging also.
Have you ever made them in oak barrels?
Yes, we also have a Sabatiano with oak barrel fermentation for 6 months.
It's called Varelli. As a matter of fact, we have that here. We bring in small quantities. We have the 2016.
And are those the ones that you found that can age well, or is it the stainless steel ones as well?
As well. It brings out totally different results because there's no oak, let's say, in the first one that you tasted. If you taste the one from 2013, it is an amazing, amazing wine, very mineral, very lots of mushroomy and soils, and it's delicious. Very different. It really changes. Let's say it becomes something else.
Actually, you know what the coolest one I've tasted? So our partnership with Marku is very recent. I think we're about 3 years in now.
Okay, that's probably why I haven't had it.
Yeah, it's new. I tasted their Cleftes, which is the biodynamic, no sulfites added, Sabatiano. I want to say randomly, Maria's cousin Vasily, who is the one I deal with on the work side, he pulled out a 2009, and I was like, oh boy, okay, I don't know. And honestly, it absolutely floored me. I had never tasted anything like that, and that's actually what changed my whole perception about Sabatiano.
Right, that's interesting you say that because, you know, we think of the great white wines of Greece, you think of Santorini, you think of Vertico and Santorini. And when the wines get to that age, oftentimes they're dead. You know, 2009s, oftentimes they oxidize and they can't make it past that point. So I'm interested that a lowly grape like Sabatiano could go longer.
You know, I think that's also why people, you know, probably a little hesitant with today, because also with Sabatiano, you know, this is a price point that is accessible to everyone.
Right.
I mean, you're talking about wines that I'm not trying to, you know, they're not cheap, but they're not expensive. You're looking at under $20 a bottle for a killer bottle of wine that you can drink, and you can really appeal to a good majority of the masses. And so I find that this is one of these, you know, it's a great calling card for us, for you know, because people aren't used to it. It is uniquely Greek, and it ticks all the boxes in terms of a retail standpoint too.
Cool.
You know, any questions from the peanut gallery before we go on? We're good?
Good.
Maria, thank you so much for staying up with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for tasting the wine.
Please give our regards to your entire family and kisses to all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria.
I will.
Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed your, listen, I know a lot of people probably thought Retsina and Sabatiano, but you know, I hope we're today, if you don't take, you know, if you don't like everything, it's fine. But on the flip side, it's great to try grapes that you might not think, you know, are in your, you know, or in your everyday vocabulary for Greece. And that there is a lot more out there aside from, you know, your workhorses, you know, of your asirtikos and stuff. And there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of things to drink that people can really get behind and, you know, enjoy on a daily basis. So now we are moving from Athens into the Peloponnese. I know we've all tasted ayurgitiko and moskofilero before, but today we have a very, very special friend with us. We have Leonidas Nasiakos with us, who, by the way, is still in the midst of harvesting moskofilero. So you have to excuse him if he's really tired today, because that is a very late ripening grape in Greece. But I kind of brought in a little bit on my maps too. So here we are, we're just going to be focusing here, you know, between, when we get towards Pyrgos, that's where Labis is going to be talking for Mercuri. But then we're going to talk now about Mantinia and Nemea. So we can work into the Peloponnese a little bit and talk a little more about grapes that everybody knows, but there's a lot of there's a lot of layers and complexity to these grapes that merit conversation and discussion too. So Leonidas, are you there?
Yes.
Hi.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm Leonidas Nasiakos, the general manager and winemaker of Semeli Estate, which was established in 1979. Actually, the first winery of Semeli was located in Attica, near Athens, and the main production was based on Sabatiano, the local Sabatiano, of course, and a few bottles of international varieties like Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay. But in 2002, Semeli moved to Péloponnèse and was located since 2002 and then in Nemea, actually, and Mantinia, two of the main appellations of Peloponnèse and Greece, I could say. So the grape varieties that we work with are, of course, Ayurgitiko from Nemea and Moskofilero from Mantinia. I think that first we'll taste the whites. Actually, we have not finished the harvest yet. We are in the harvest of Moskofilero, which is going to last for 4 or 5 more days. Okay. So first we will taste the Mantinia, the white wine, based on Moskofilero.
Actually, I'm showing some pictures of the winery in Nemea, just for everybody to see.
Yes, that's the winery in Nemea.
If you wouldn't mind, just because I know it's kind of fun. Like I was just going through all of the fun stuff about mythology and where Semeli got her name, because that's always a fun one for people if they don't know that part of mythology.
So actually, yes, in ancient Greece, the Greeks used to believe in 12 different gods. The king of the gods was Zeus, who was married with Hera, but at the same time Zeus had several love affairs, let's say. So one of his love affairs was Semeli. Sometimes Semeli became pregnant from Zeus, and Hera, his wife, learned about the pregnancy And because Hera was very jealous, she decided to kill Semele. And how she did that was that she convinced Zeus to appear in front of Semele with all of his power. The thunders, the rainfall, the storms, the winds, because Zeus was the god who was controlling the weather conditions. So that's what he did. He appeared in front of Semele with all of his power, and Semele was killed after that. But Zeus wanted desperately to keep this baby. So what he did was to take the baby out from the belly of Semele and wrap it in his leg for the rest of the pregnancy. So the baby came out from the leg of Zeus, and the name that the baby was given was Dionysus, the god of wine in ancient Greece. So Semele actually was the mother of Dionysus in ancient Greece. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of fun to bring in some of the mythology parts. I've got a big painting back here of Poseidon, I think. So yeah.
So let's say some things about Mantinea. Actually, Mantinea is located in the center of Péloponnèse, in a high altitude of 650 meters. Actually, it is a plateau surrounded by mountains with very cold winters, with snowfalls, low temperatures. Imagine that during the winter, maybe the temperature go down to 10 minus. But also Mantinea has cool summer nights. So that helps the ripening of the grapes to process very slowly and to preserve the acidity, the freshness, the crispiness, and all the floral character of Moscofilero. So that's why the harvest of Moscofilero takes place starts in the first week of October, and sometimes lasts in the last week of October.
Isn't this the last white grape to ripen in Greece?
Actually, yes. I think there is one more in Patra. It's a grape variety named Sideritis.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The last.
Okay.
Okay.
Parparusis makes a good one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So Moscofilero is a pink-skinned grape, which gives actually white wines, but also rosé wines, but mostly white, or sparkling wines, which have the character of a rose petal of citrus, crispiness, high acidity, and a medium moderate alcohol from 11.5 to 12.5%. Actually, Moscofilero is a wine which can be consumed all over the year, but mostly from spring to summer and autumn, and can of course can match fish, seafood, salads, or could be consumed as an aperitif.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Moscofilero.
Mm-hmm.
See the different colors on the grapes, and so that's why it's really, really cool. Where you don't, it's not a truly one color. There's a lot of different things that go on in the vineyards and the vines.
Yeah, sometimes it's pink, sometimes it's red.
Does it matter the grape? I mean, even though the skins are dark, does it matter that the ripeness of the skins for harvest, even though you're not using the skins you're not extracting anything from the skins?
Yeah, actually, the color of the skins is a point to give us the direction how the ripening is going.
Right, how the internal ripening is. Right.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay,
exactly.
That's a good. That's better than using a computer, I guess.
Yes.
Cool. So now we're tasting the Mantinea for everyone. If you're on with us to share the in the line, we are now going to taste the Mantinea.
I think the Mantinea of 2019, Andrea, or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's it's so pungent. That's always a very typical characteristic of Moscofilero I've found. Very, very aromatic. Lots of intense aromatic DNA that comes from that grape, and it's I love the way it smells. It's almost like aromatherapy. It's very pleasing. The rose petal, almost like ginger type aromas that are so pleasing on the nose.
You get a little bit of that white, I would say white pepper, but
yeah,
you know,
I'd say so too. Very definitely pepper.
just something just on the, this is obviously really still, you know. So it's really, it's gonna, this will develop, and this is just the everyday stainless steel version of the Moscofilero that Leonidas makes. So this has time to, I think you've got at least a few more years on this, and then it'll get a little more interesting as well as it ages. Leonidas, could you talk a little bit about the vineyard site that this comes from Zevoglatio? What's your soils like in your vineyards?
Actually, mostly the soil is clay. Okay. The vineyard is estate-owned, of course, of the vineyards, which are in an age of between 25 to 30 years old. Okay. So appellation of Mantinia includes 18 different villages. One of them is Zevoglatio, which actually is the main area of vineyards in Mantinia, and in my opinion, gives the most intense character and typicity of the variety. That's why our vineyards are located in this special area of Zevoglatio.
Super cool.
Yeah, good. How much is elevation vital to make good Moscofilero?
Actually, the elevation in Mantinia starts from 620 meters and lasts up to 650. And I think that this is the ideal elevation to produce wine with typicity.
Can you make good Moscofilero without elevation on a flat sort of valley floor, for example?
No.
But I also think
totally different.
Too.
Right.
You know, I think also the ABV needs to stay low for it to be really, because otherwise it turns into a perfume bomb. Personally.
Right. Sure.
You know, for me, it's like anytime I see Moscofilero, like a cheap one that's on the shelf, it's like 13, 13.2, 13.5 ABV. That's like you walked into like an Abercrombie and Fitch. And
right.
You breathe.
Right.
Yeah, like for me, like 11.5 to 12% is the sweet spot for a good Moscofilero.
Yeah, and you know, like really going back to the idea of Greek wines, you know, there's not many places on earth that have warm climate, proximity to the ocean, and high elevation sites, and that's really the magic of Greece. And you can't grow grapes like this in many parts of the world, especially where you get 12% alcohol or 12.5% alcohol. It just doesn't happen normally.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Imagine that in Mantinia, during the summer, maybe we will have a temperature during the day, we'll have temperature 35, 38 centigrade.
Wow.
Right. During the night, temperature is going down to 18, 15. Mm-hmm. Imagine that we have 20 centigrades difference of the temperature between day and night.
Yeah, that's wild.
It's very critical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, that's why I think you also are able to, it just slows the ripening process down.
Right.
So
but that's why you have an aromatic wine like this, while at the same time, high acidity and very fresh.
Yes.
It's because of that. Yeah. There's no winemaking involved there. That's all the place.
Yep.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Going back. And then how far, Leonidas, are the vineyards from water? I mean, so therefore, do you find that there is the sea influence from is there a breeze that's coming through because you're at the plateau? It's really just fresh mountain air for
the plateau is all actually is surrounded by mountains. It doesn't have any influence from the sea.
Interesting.
Okay.
Look at the minerality and the salinity.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Let me see if I can
Great.
Cool. So shall we move on to the Nemea?
Mm-hmm.
Nemea. Peleponnes again. Nemea, another PDO, another appellation of Greece, which has the main variety of Aeurgitiko. Aeurgitiko in Greece means St. George, the grape of St. George. And that's because Nemea, many years ago, I think 200 years ago, was named St. George. That's why the grape variety has the same name. And the myth says that the wine of Aeurgitiko, the red wine of Aeurgitiko, is compared with, is being called the blood of Hercules.
Oh, yes.
Because Hercules, who was a semi-god in ancient Greece, was told by the gods to do 12 different achievements. One of the achievements, that's the myth of Hercules, was to kill the lion of Nemea. And that's what he did. He killed the lion, and that's why they say that the red wine of Agriorgitiko is similar to the blood of Hercules. So in reality now, Nemea actually starts from an altitude of 280 meters and lasts up to 850. So in all these different elevations, soils, microclimates, the same grape variety, the Agriorgitiko, can produce different styles of wine. Rosé wines, or fresh, fruity, easygoing red wines, or red wines to be aged, sweet or medium sweet. So actually is a versatile variety. I don't know if you remember the first picture, one of the first pictures, which shows the winery. When
I can get back without this making everybody dizzy.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. There we go.
That's the winery. So if you look behind, you can see, maybe you can see the sea. That's the Corinthian Gulf.
Oh, okay.
That means that the sea breeze impacts and influences the grapes and the vineyards. That's why the grapes in Kouti is a sub-region of Nemea. It's the village where the winery is located. So Kouti is considered as the highest quality vineyards of Nemea appellation. And that's because we have the altitude from 550 to 600 meters, but also we have the influence of the sea breeze. And that's why the grapes are ripening very well and also keep the acidity.
Yeah, that's super cool. What's your altitude there, Leonidas?
600 meters.
600.
Yeah.
And your soil types, because I'm seeing a lot more stone up there. Because also with depending where you are in the appellation, if I remember correctly, the valley has more clay, and then the further up you get on the slopes, you have a more like a rockier soil. Is that right?
No, limestone. Actually, here we have limestone mainly in Kouti. Okay.
Okay. Oops, wrong way. Okay, let me go back to where we were. So I'm trying not to get anybody dizzy. I apologize if I am. Look away for 2 seconds. Okay. So these are some of the vineyards, myths, Agriorgitiko, the grapes. So we are tasting the Semeli Nemea Reserve at this time. Can you also just talk a little bit about what reserve means on a label? Because here in the US, it can mean something very different if it's a California winery or American winery versus what you're talking about in Greece too.
Actually, in Greece and all over European Union, reserve means a wine that is a PDO wine, of course, and he has to be aged for 24 months, at least 12 months in oak and 6 months in the bottle. The rest of the 6 months until the 24 depends on what the winemaker wants to do. Maybe barrel, oak, or tank, or bottle. But totally, a reserve wine has to be a PDO and to be aged for totally 24 months before release. On the other hand, Grand Reserve needs 48 months of aging. At least 18 in oak and 18 in the bottle, but totally 48.
So, okay. So let's start everyone. If you have your Nemea Reserve, if you wouldn't mind tasting some, and let's talk a little bit about what Agriorgitiko. Of course, there are a lot in the market here.
Yeah,
but
there's a lot of different versions, you know.
Yes,
there's
so many.
Yeah, because some taste like Pinot Noir and some taste like Merlot. You know, it really has a wide sort of palette of profiles.
Well, actually, I can say that this is the advantage of Agriorgitiko, but also it's a disadvantage because somebody who wants to sacrifice what Agriorgitiko and Nemea is, it's not so easy because you can see many different styles of Nemea or Agorgitico. And it depends on the elevation, on the soil, on the microclimate, on many different conditions. So that's the characteristic of Nemea. It's a versatile variety, of course, but you cannot say that there is only one style of Agorgitico, only one style of Nemea. You will see different styles.
Yeah. I like this style, I have to say.
I think it's approachable. I mean, it gives people a lot of, you know, there's a lot of complexity there, even though it's still young, but it has the acidity there to let this develop further.
Yeah, so, I agree. You know, you look at the color, it's translucent, it's very see-through, very reminiscent of Pinot Noir, very aromatic. And what I like about this is that there's an intensity to this wine. At the same time, it's very elegant. It's not heavy, where you can tell that comes from a great vineyard site. You know, that's the high elevation coming through in the flavor of this wine, where it's deep, but also very fresh. And that's something not many places can pull off.
And then the oak treatment that you use as well, Leonidas, these are not very oaky wines. So you're actually able to taste the grape variety, which I think is also really cool too, because I'm not a huge fan of a lot of oak on my reds.
Of course, we give priority to the typicity of the grape.
Yeah.
Super cool. Super cool.
Excellent.
Do we have any questions from our peanut gallery out there, just out of curiosity, for Leonidas? Any questions? Michael, do you have anything else? Any questions or anything you'd like to share?
I'm just thinking about, you know, the finish of this wine, and it's quite long. And it's really, I'm imagining a lot of great food pairing things with this, and forgive me, Leonidas, I don't want to compare your wine to other wines, but it's just, I mean, in order to sort of create an idea for people who have had these other wines, like it's almost like a Nebbiolo style, where it's got a lot of grip on the finish. It's got this really delicious chewiness that you could pair a lot of different foods with. You know, I could see you doing fish and chicken and lamb and a lot of different dishes with this wine, because of its intensity as well as its lightness, but also its firm chewiness on the finish. So
yeah, I agree.
It's an easy wine to pair with food, I'd say.
I think you can really, you know, it can span a meal. You could even do this with a nice salmon as well too. You could even go with like a heavier fish.
Yeah.
Leonidas, out of in your experience too, Agorgitico and your style has the ability to age. So this is something that how many more years do you think like a 2016 of the Nemea Reserve would be? Do you feel it's at its peak? Do you think it's still at the beginning? Thought?
I can give 10 years totally from the vintage, which means for 6 more years, it's going to be fine.
Wow.
For sure. The 2016, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Super cool. Thank you very much. And I know you're exhausted, Leonidas, and I thank you so much for staying up with us today, because I know it's late for you and you have to get up probably like 3 hours and harvest again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions before we let Leonidas go to sleep? Okay. It was good to see you, my dear.
Thank you, Leonidas.
Bye-bye.
Excellent wine.
Thank you.
Excellent stuff.
Thank you. So I hope that, you know, now we have also been able to educate everybody. Now, you know, these are some of the main grape varieties. Now we're going to a really cool part of the Peloponnese. Not that I don't love where Leonidas is in Nemea and Mantinia, but for me, the Western Peloponnese has like a very special place in my heart. I've always loved going to visit, and this is probably, you know, like some of my favorite people. No offense to everybody else I work with, but I love these people. We're going to go now towards ancient Olympia to Mercouri. And this is a really, really fun part of Greece because people know it, but they don't know it. And this is for me just like a part of Greece that you just go there and your stress just goes away. So I'm a huge fan. Today we have 4th generation Labis Kanalakopoulos with us. And he's going to be speaking about his family's vineyards, and the winery, which is if I'm correct, Labis, the oldest family-owned winery in Greece since 1864. So, where's Labis?
Hey, Andrea.
How are you, darling?
Can I be heard? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here. Andrea, it's always lovely to see you. And talking about Mercury Estate, it's actually the second oldest Greek winery. It's 1864. Haya Klaus, that used to be in Patras, was a little bit earlier established. And it's still, I think it's the oldest still running because it remains in the family since 1864. And actually, I'm the fifth generation.
I was thinking than you are, sorry.
it's fun. And we're located in western coast of the Peleponnes, which is this place that you can see on the slides. It's a nice place, and it's really close to the sea. So the winery is actually a big, extensive part of land that it's really close to the sea. It's quite on the ocean, and it's a plateau with an altitude of 50 meters approximately, and all the vineyards are resting on top of this plateau and are highly affected by the breezes of the sea.
I'm sorry to interrupt you one moment, but we've all decided that we're moving to your place. Just so you expect a bunch of us to show up at your door. And sometimes
you are very welcome. Very welcome.
The best, I'm telling you.
It's a nice place indeed.
It's a good visit.
Yeah, it doesn't suck.
No.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. And you're all welcome. All welcome. Once the planes will be fully running.
I know.
So, yeah, it's we're living in sometimes weird times. I was telling about the family story. Five generations. The first generation, Theodorus Mercury. He was a guy that had roots in the area, not where the estate is right now, from a village that was in the highlands. And he was a merchant. He had the chance back then to visit Italy and dealing with cotton merchants to make money and to deal with the culture of winemaking that the Italians did have a long time ago, the Greeks. So he was highly affected by the Italians, the winemaking, and when he decided to come back to Greece, he took with him some bunches of some cuttings of the Refosco grape variety and came to the place where Mercury is right now and planted them and created his business. So the business kept on going since then. Leonidas Mercury, his son, was the next generation. My grandmother and her sister, the third generation that ran the winery up until the 1960s. My father was the one to renovate, do some major work in the winery, reconstruct some buildings, and now it's the fifth generation that cooperates with the fourth to.
That's his dad with the purple shirt.
Yes,
yeah, what a nice guy, your father. Oh my God, the best.
Love them.
Sweet man, yeah.
And the peacocks.
The peacocks, exactly. Yeah, it's like you go to it's like the Smithsonian Museum, the winery.
That house, actually, Labis, would you just mind talking about how when your aunt lived there? Remember, I'd never gone into the house until your aunt passed away, and that was like the craziest place I've ever walked into.
Yeah, that's the old villa. That's
the feet.
Yeah, this is you can see it. This is an old photo, quite old photo, and it was the old mansion that the family used to stay. It was inhabited up until 5-6 years ago, and it's not a typical Peloponnesian architecture, definitely. So it's it adds up on the beautiness, let's say, of the
it's the best place ever. Oh, there they are. That's Kyrio Christo and Kyrio Vasili.
Yes, on the slides you can see the fourth generation sharing two wines, one of which we will taste today. So coming to nowadays, the estate grows around 13 different varieties all of them except one, which is the one that we are going to taste first, Roditis, are cultivated in our self-owned vineyards, and making 13 different cuvées of interesting, I think, and nice wines. So I think we'll start with Foloi, which is our Roditis.
Sure.
And as I told you, it's the only variety, Roditis is the only variety that we do not grow in the estate. And the reason is that Roditis gives its best results when cultivated in the highlands, in high altitude vineyards. So as you saw from the picture, the estate is not one of them. And when Foloi, which was our first white wine, came in the market around 1990s, we wanted to explore this specific variety because it's maybe the most typical Peloponnesian wine variety. It's actually the second most cultivated white variety in Greece. And although we couldn't cultivate it in the estate, we decided to cooperate with not more than 4 or 5 growers that we still deal with up until now, and take the best quality of the grapes we could find. So the vineyards are located in 3 different areas in the highlands of Ilia, which is half an hour, 40 minutes drive from the winery. And the region is Foloi. Foloi has an old collection of connection with winemaking. There's talking about Greek myths, as earlier, there is a myth again, a Greek myth again connecting.
You have to talk about that with the label so people know what what the label is.
I'll come to that later. I'll come to that.
Reminding you, that's all.
Yeah, and the other vineyards can be found in Aegio, which is close to Patras, and it's the PDO zone of Roditis. Roditis is a PDO variety when cultivated in that region. Altitude of the vineyards starts from 500 and goes up until 800 meters and 900 meters in the Aegio region. And honestly, it's the best quality of Roditis can be found. Roditis, a pink skin variety, again, close to Mosophyllus, as you saw in the picture. Beautiful vineyards in the highlands, highly affected by the sea breezes, because especially in Aegio, the vineyards are really, really close, although high in altitude, really, really close in the Corinthian Gulf. So they are highly affected by the breezes. Pretty much biological treatment, no irrigation vineyards. So it's beautiful fruit that gives really nice results as far as acidity, freshness, and expression is concerned. Around 10 years ago, we decided to enhance a little bit the Roditis aromatics with the addition of Viognier, and they give a little boost in aromatics, but also in the structure of the wine. So this is how Viognier ended in the blend. Viognier is just the 10% of the blend. We didn't want to alter the Roditis character, which is what Foloi is about, but rather than give a small highlight both in the aromas and the structure. And I think it really works in this percentage. We're talking about a stainless steel fermentation, classical white fermentation with cold maceration. And I think we're getting a characteristic Roditis with a touch, with the Viognier touch.
Let me tell you, I've got the 2019 and the acid is through the roof on this thing right now. Oh my goodness, it is so zippy.
It's quite, yes, it gives such freshness and this zip effect in a way.
Whew.
This has always been, this is, you know, my first trip to Greece was in 2009. And that was the memory that I kind of remember most was visiting Mercouri. And
very nice for you.
Yeah, seriously, you know, of course, Santorini is a very strong memory too. But visiting your family's estate was incredible. And Folloi has always been my go-to inexpensive Greek white wine. And I would buy it every vintage and have it on the list at the restaurant that I was working at the time. And because it's flavorful, it's fresh, it's not too concentrated, it's like easy drinking, it's just a really great wine. It's a really enjoyable wine to drink and has all the aromas and freshness and, you know, simplicity in a good way. You know, it's not too serious.
We don't need everything so serious.
Right.
No, that's the concept about the wine. It's that it's a wine that can go nicely with aperitifs, with fried dishes, with salads, can go by its own. It's a fun wine, and it's a wine that can be enjoyable during summer, during hot days.
So before we move on to the red, can you just talk about the label a little bit? Because I mean, you should see the stuff I get. People think it's a praying mantis or a locust. So I think it's just kind of fun just to talk briefly about the label before we go.
Yeah, a few words. It's first of all, it's an art painting of a prominent, famous Greek painter, his name is Yannis Adamakos, and it's what I was talking about, the depiction of the old myth. Briefly, Folloi takes its name from Pholos. Pholos was the king of the centaurs, according to the myth. So Pholos had as a king, you know, had a very precious jar where he kept his extra special wine. So once he invited Hercules to celebrate, and they opened the wine, and the rest of the centaurs were really mad, and so a war started. On the one hand, it was Hercules and Pholos, the king. On the other hand, it was the rest of the centaurs. And this painting, if you pay a little attention, is the depiction of Hercules on the right and the centaur on the left fighting over a jar of wine. That's the story pretty much.
How do you guys like the fact that I brought all this mythology back to the roots over here? You see, we had a little bit of education too. It's so much fun.
But yeah, Greece has a lot to do with mythology, and always in mythology, one of the basic themes was wine. No?
Oh, yeah. This is so tasty. This is honestly, so for those
every year this wine is good.
It's just happiness in a bottle is all I can say. It's happiness in a bottle. All right. Thank you, Labis, for that one. Now let's talk a little bit. Refosco is not traditionally a Greek grape. Of course, the one clone's named after the family, so I think that's pretty cool. Let's talk a little bit about Refosco while we get ready to have our estate red, please.
Yes. So as I mentioned earlier, Refosco was introduced to the estate. It was actually the first variety that was planted in the estate in 1870s. So there is a long connection. Although Refosco does has its roots and its origin in Friuli, in northern Italy, that was the region where Theodore Mercury, the establisher of the estate, lived for some years, and this is where he met Refosco. And probably because it's a really, it gives. As you can see in the photo, the grapes are pretty fascinating. They are big, they are colorful, they are quite interesting to look. So, probably he was...
Tannic usually, right? They're usually tannic grapes. Yeah.
Yes, tannic grape and with high acidity as well.
Mm-hmm.
So he brought it to the estate and we cultivated since then. And as you can imagine, a grape that has been cultivated for over 150 years has altered its character and has adapted itself to the climate, which is totally different than Friuli. You know, we are in a warmer place, less rainy, probably far warmer during summer. So it's interesting how it has created a clone after so many years of cultivation in the winery. And actually, in the Greek wine law, it can also be found as merkureiko, meaning the mercury grape, because back in the day, they used to give cuttings to the farmers and nobody knew about Refosco. Everybody knew about taking from mercury. So eventually the name came from there. So it's a long cultivation. We're really, really proud to still have a really small parcel of land that has some of the initial grapes planted. And the rest are grapes that were planted around 30 years ago, 30, 40 years ago. Ones that you...
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Can't this become PDO eventually?
Eventually, when the thing about PDOs can be discussed again in Greece, it might become, you know, but...
it should be.
Yes, it's Greek law, and
yeah,
these things take a long time in Greece. It's no easy things, especially things that have to do with bureaucracy are usually slow in Greece.
Michael Lapis might be in his walker by then. You never know.
Maybe then, the 8th generation might make it.
If there's a clone of Refosco named Mercury, that's your first step, right?
That's pretty.
Yes,
that gets you close.
Yeah, it's close, not that close, but still closer.
It's on the way. It's paving the path.
Okay.
It's fun, but hopefully...
And that's when the big bucks come in.
Hopefully it can be discussed again.
We'll get there. And then we have Mavrodaphne.
Exactly, yeah. Besides Refosco, there's Mavrodaphne. So it's a blend. This wine that we're going to taste is 85% Refosco and 15% Mavrodaphne. And Mavrodaphne is a very, very significant Greek variety. It might be known, especially to the older ones, as a variety that gives sweet wines.
Yeah.
But that's not the case here. And that's not the case in the estate since 1960s, when it was initially planted.
We tasted Mavrodaphne from Kefalonia in our last session. So,
yes,
we did that one.
Beautiful, beautiful. So Mavrodaphne is PDO in the zones of Kefalonia and the zone of Patra. And Mavrodaphne does have two major clones, from which the Tsigelo clone, which is the one that we use and everybody nowadays use, has prevailed and considered to be the most quality one. I was talking about the introduction of Mavrodaphne at the estate, which happened around 1960s, when an uncle of my father had the idea. He was a chemist, and he had the idea to use Mavrodaphne in the blend of in the Refosco wine that we were making, to use it as a variety that could help and showcase the wine even more. So the story about Mercury estate and Mavrodaphne goes back to from 1960s, and eventually, by the years, Mavrodaphne was recognized as a variety that could do amazingly good dry wines. Mm-hmm. And I think that we are still in the beginning of this route of this era of
renaissance for this grape, because like a Sabatiano in the beginning, where that always got a bad rap, Mavrodaphne got a bad rap for a long time too. We're being like
exactly because it was connected with, you know, sweet wines and cheap wines, cheap sweet wines. Not to, I don't want to say that Mavrodaphne can't do beautiful sweet wines, can do amazingly good sweet wines, but usually when things are getting cheaper, quality drops. So it had a bad reputation in many ways, and it was beautiful that it was rediscovered in a way as a dry variety, and it showcases beautiful wines that have structure, have tannins, have dark fruit aromas, and this is, I think, what it gives to the Refosco as well. So you get a wine that has, on the one hand, the acidity and the tannins of Refosco with the red fruit when it's young, and on the other hand, Mavrodaphne, which is small amount, gets and helps the structure, gives some tannins, and give this leather chocolatey aroma that will be even more noticeable when the years pass and the wine ages.
And I will say, because I have tasted back, anytime you can get your hands on older bottles of the Mercury Estate Red and their cava, OMG is all I have to say.
I agree.
These are babies. We shouldn't be drinking 2017 right now. It's a crime against humanity, but it is what it is.
I mean, I would even go as far as to say this is one of the great red wines of Greece. Without a doubt.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's true. It's so particular to your estate. No one else makes wine quite like this.
So
I
for
think
those
that
that are collectors, get some and cellar it.
Yeah.
It has created, in a way, it's a very, very specific character. And I think that the varieties have blended really, really nicely together. And through the years, you can see that there is typicity in, honestly, what you were taking was really, it was true. And I really recommend that this wine should be aged, because it really evolves in the bottle, and it's supposed to age, but still, you know, you can have it also. Pretty much that's the story. It ages 12 months in oak. We don't treat it heavily with oak. So the oak is second and third use. And we try to have the red fruit and the you know, the varietal characteristics prevailing in the wine. And that's pretty much it.
We have a question from our group, from Peter Mytikas, asking, can Refosco be aged and for how long?
We're talking about the specific variety, just Refosco.
Actually, Peter,
no, your wine.
Are we talking about state red or Refosco from Mercuri in this particular blend?
So this blend can, we suggest, we want to be on the safe side always. We suggest 8 to 10 years, but it can really easily go
You're being modest. This is like a 15-year bottle.
It can do, but we will try to be on the safe side. And both this one and Cavas as well Cava can go even more. So it's,
let's see. Hold on. I see a question coming through. Let me see what's going on here. Oh, okay. Yes, he says thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
So do we have any more? I mean, and these are just, obviously we're scratching the surface. So anything you see from Mercuri, the wines are amazing. And so I know I don't have a picture to show you, but when Labis was referring to the self-rooted vines that they do some very small production wines, those are the faces, as I call them. That's your, Labis, that's your aunt, your grandma, and your great uncle, right? On that label?
Yes, exactly.
So those three wines, they're very, very small production, and we get a little bit in every year or so. Those are from the 1864 vines. So if you find one on a list, I suggest you grab it.
It's a pretty interesting vineyard, and it's miraculously it has survived phylloxera, and we're still it's our little gem.
Have you finished harvest, or are you guys still going?
We just ended harvest, and we're now considering about starting olive harvest. So harvest never ends,
How was
Mediterranean life?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you have you're young. You're allowed. You have to just go for 36 hours at a time before you sleep, my dear. You don't have to worry.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I do. But it was a great year, an amazing year, and it's a pity in a way that this beautiful year is connected with the market being a little bit upset, and all the COVID situation.
Silver lining for all the bad news, darling. So that means that when we're ready to drink it, it's just going to be freaking killer.
But yes, it was an amazing year. 2020 was so clean, no disease. Yes, everything. At least at the estate, at our region, it didn't rain from April up until October. It was super clean, super quality, honestly.
I can't wait. Although I can, but I can't, because honestly, the Falloy is too young right now. I'm actually pissed that we're going to run out soon, but it is what it is. But
I was thinking that, with all this situation and with COVID, maybe it's an opportunity for people to start appreciate older vintages of white, especially, which was not very highlighted when things were normal. So it's interesting.
We're okay with things to be a little older in this country.
Yes,
it depends where you are, but they're not. It's not so bad, personally.
Well, of course not. I think it's you give the time to the wine to mature, to express itself even better.
I mean, these are not wines for instant gratification. Granted, you can drink them now and you can thoroughly enjoy them. And I hope, especially when you tasted Mercuri's Estate Red, if you didn't finish it now during this conversation, if you can not finish it today, I'm going to highly recommend that you keep some in your bottle and wait till tomorrow. This will be a different beast by tomorrow, and you'll be like, holy crap, why the hell didn't I keep it longer? And I think that that's a lot of, that's indicative of a lot of the wines. So if you don't finish them today, it's okay. Wait till tomorrow and try them in a few days, because it kind of also mimics time with aging.
Exactly.
And that'll also be a really good indicator for how long you would like to be able to carry, hold them, should you decide to like grab some and cellar them, because these are all still great values. These are not wines that you have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to stock your cellar on. And you're able to have some wines that are just absolutely going to blow people's doors off in like 5 years.
That's the beauty of Greece.
Yep.
That's the beauty of Greek wines. And make no mistake, these wines could only be produced in their respective areas. There's something really phenomenal about the indigenous varieties and grown on these very unique high hillsides in these areas in the Peloponnese and around Athens. And you cannot recreate these wines no matter how hard you try in any wine region in the world. And that's what makes them really unique and worthwhile and worth, spending time and attention to learning about them.
For sure. Mm-hmm. This was so tasty. I don't even want to drink that. I have a bottle of I think it's a 2017. Oh my God. I'm so pissed. We're about to move to 2018 and I'm really kicking myself right now.
But 17 was a good vintage as well. It was.
Yeah, but it's different. It's the fact that it's like this is a baby. This poor thing needs to sit down and mature.
I hope some people that get it are able to mature it on their own cellar.
I'll tell you this much: there's a few cases going stashed in my cellar, and I'm not giving it up. So
yeah,
as we say, suck it up, Buttercup. But that's all good. Yeah, for sure. Do we have any questions for Labis? Because for this poor guy, it's after 1 o'clock. I know if it was normal times, he'd be at the Bouzoukia right now hanging out.
No.
But he's got to get up to go to work tomorrow morning. Oh, somebody has a question for us. Hold on. Will we be able to continue? Yes. So the question is, can you continue to purchase the wines? And what I will tell you all is, even if, let's say, yes, if you should be able to from Giannoni, but if there is a wine shop that, and now this actually kind of ties me back to opening remarks. This particular level and caliber of wines from Greece on the retail side struggle, and Michael will attest, restaurant is a totally different beast.
Yeah.
Because you're really pairing food and wine, and that, like, when you're going into a restaurant, you're going for an experience. And when you're going into a retail shop, for many people, I'm not saying for everyone, it's instant gratification. So with a retail shop, the retailer is really going to be very acutely attuned to purchasing and putting things on the shelf that certain people are going to be looking for. So you need to either, if they don't have it on the shelf and it's a store that you frequent, you tell them, I need you to get this wine. This is amazing. The customer is always right. So if a certain retailer doesn't stock it and they don't want to get it for you, then you shouldn't be shopping there to begin with. But on the flip side, the feedback is if Giannoni, for example, is a wine shop that you do frequent, you should tell them you are going to become an existing customer for it. Therefore, it creates supply and demand. And especially in this COVID culture, shelf space is at a premium, and that they are going to need to know that there is an inherent demand from the consumer side, so they know to keep it on the shelf. So that's very, very, important, especially in this particular climate, because retail is key. But on the other side, wines from all over the world are just competing. So we just have to be very vocal in our not demands, but in our wishes. And if there's a problem, then we fix. All right. Anybody else have any questions? Michael, any thoughts from you on this as well?
I'm just happy to be part of this. I love tasting these wines, and like I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, like, these are very special, and you cannot replicate these anywhere in the world. These are wines of place, and the fact that they're not, abusively expensive is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know that, I know we not that we ran late, but I hope everyone was, enjoyed our tour of the Peloponnese in Athens today, where we got in a little bit of mythology and some really fun characters, as well as we learned about grapes that maybe not everyone readily goes to, because I think it's important. And thank you, Peter, for the compliment. He said thank you. He enjoyed himself. You know, everybody knows certain grape varieties, and I respect that. And they know Santorini, and I respect that. But on the flip side, there is so much more to the country that needs to be explored and promoted and discussed. And I think that when we talk about wines from the Peloponnese, they're serious, but they're not expensive. Whereas when we were in our previous educational series, the wines were more expensive. It's not a bad thing. I think the fact is that we're demonstrating that Greece has the ability to produce world-class quality wines at a price point that is accessible to many. And if you really want to go out there and you want to spend the money, you can. But the fact is that we have these wines that are available to a very large part of this consumer market in the United States, but they just need to be educated. And it's all back to education. That's why we do this. I mean, I could sit here and talk until I'm blue in the face about it, but until people understand that there are grapes out there aside from Cabernet, Chardonnay, and Merlot, and they don't come out of a faucet and they don't taste like your teeth are going to fall out with tattoos on your fingers like the prisoner, it's going to take some time. And that's what we aim to do with this series and with things that we do, is that we want people to understand the story and to be able to connect with our producers and to understand that wine in this case is not really a commodity. It's a labor of love. And the fact that to get wine from the vine here and into your mouth took a long time. And it takes a lot of effort, and it's not something that happens overnight. You'll never be an overnight success. But what we really hope is that everyone that was here today spreads the word, because that's the most important thing. Throw a bottle of something, you know, Retsina. People don't like it. Get a bottle of Marcru Retsina. Throw it in somebody's face. Dare them to not like it. Put it with the right food. Blind taste somebody on Labis's estate red. Can they figure out it really comes from Greece? They might all of a sudden be, oh, I'm such a snob. I only drink wines from Italy and France. I won't even look at Greece. Then good luck trying to, you know, do a blind tasting with it. So I think that there's a lot of value, and there just needs to be more vocalization is what I would like to say about it. So I don't get all hot under the collar about it.
I just want to step in here because I know Michael has to go, and Michael, thank you so much for your participation. Really, you're probably one of the best ambassadors of Greek wines that exists anywhere.
I'm a huge fan, obviously.
And it's apparent.
It's because of what Greece does. Not about me. It's about the wines.
We can't thank you.
That good.
For participating. And just so everybody knows, there are 2 more parts left. There's a surprise in the last part, which I won't share right now. I don't even think Andrea knows. But I also owe an apology to Andrea, because when we first started planning these series of wine events, she said to me, oh, you know, I really want to present people with affordable wines. And being kind of the wine snob that I am, collecting Burgundy wines and quietly secreting away wines from Santorini, because that's where I'm from, I said to her, no, you know, we have a lot of people that, you know, really enjoy good wine, and they're going to appreciate, you know, a high price point. And she said, no, trust me. And hopefully I trusted her. And every bottle of wine that we open up, and when you think about it and you look at the price point compared to the quality, and you're right, the love that goes into making these bottles of wine, they're remarkable. And I thank all the winemakers for all their hard work, their participation in these events. And we really can't thank you all enough for everything that you do. And I hope by having these, you know, wine Zoom events that eventually it pays off for everyone, and that more people start to learn about the quality and the value of Greek wines, because quite frankly, I challenge anybody to go find a beautiful $20 bottle of Burgundy wine.
You can't do it. Can't do it.
It's absolutely not possible.
Yeah.
But yet you can find a $20 bottle of Greek wine that's as good as a $200 bottle of Burgundy.
Right. And that's why personally I buy so much Greek wine when at that price point. I never buy Burgundy at that price point. It's not good.
I may have said this the first time on the first event, but when I first met Michael at Peleponνήσου, and I saw the menu and all the Greek wines in there, I was so blown away by the fact that somebody with so much talent and knowledge was pushing Greek wines in such a fine establishment. And, I think we owe, as a country, we owe a debt of gratitude to you. So we thank you.
My pleasure.
And Andrea, your knowledge of Greek wines is exceptional. We're laughing here because we're a few people in one room, and we appreciated all the history lessons today. It just added such a wonderful flavor to the wine event. And thank you to Alexandra, because Alexandra really works hard to put all of this together. And we really appreciate all of her efforts. So thank you to everyone. I implore people to stay. There's no reason to go. You can stay and drink and chat if you like. So there's no rush. It's kind of like our little Greek wine bar.
Michael, you have to go. Thank you. It was good to see you.
Thank you, guys. Great to see you.
Darling.
Always a pleasure, my dear. And look forward to the next one.
For sure.
Thank you, Marcos. Thank you, Alexandra.
Labis, I see you in front of me. You look good, darling. I don't think you're still on, or Maria, but thank you guys so much for joining us. And my mom says hi. She's here. Hold on, Ma, come back real quick. Hold on. Yota wants to say hi.
Yota wants to say hello.
There she is.
Hello, thank you.
Yes,
are you in your new place, Andrea?
I'm back home finally after 15 months.
That's good.
Why do you think I got Fascianos behind me? I was telling Alexandra, he was one of the first guys to go back up on my wall.
Oh, by the way, we had a question. Do we know if Semele was born, if Dionysus was born from the left or right foot of Zeus?
Oh, I can't get that. That's no. I got nothing.
Very good question, by the way.
You know what though? I don't remember there being any sort of reference to that in the mythological stories I was reading. It didn't say, but you never know. You got to Google it.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of Google is the new god. But just in case most people didn't know, we picked the name of this event because the highest point of Mount Olympus is Mytikas, which is they call it the nose of Mount Olympus, and it was the idea that it's the nose of the gods, and the nose of the gods knows what is good wine, and apparently all the good wine is in Greece, thankfully. So
yeah, that's why I tried to work in a little bit of the mythology and the gods, just because it was kind of fun to bring it all back together. And and then we have all of this fun stuff between Philoi and Hercules and Semele. It's like, why not? We might as well enjoy it. If we're going to talk about it, we might as well talk about the fun stuff too and learn
Absolutely. Something. And everybody really look forward to, there's something special that's going to come up in one of these events, and it's going to just blow everybody away.
Oh, so boy. I don't know about this either. You're throwing me a curveball?
I know we can't tell you either, but you will soon find out. You're going to find out before everybody else.
Yes. I better. I mean, for the record, you're welcome. You realize that you actually had to eat your humble pie on this one.
I did. I admitted it. Listen, at least I can admit when I'm wrong. So.
That's right. You see, we all want people to understand that there's so much more to Greece, and we've only really started to scratch the surface. And then when we end up in other parts of the country, there is just so much fun stuff out there and things to learn. And the day you stop learning and the day you stop wanting to learn is the day you just, get out of it. It's done.
Absolutely. Correct. You're absolutely right. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Alexandra, any last minute words?
I thank everyone for joining us. Η παραγωγή ήταν υπέροχη. Thank you very much. We really felt wonderful με τη συμμετοχή σας. Thank you, Trade Commissioner. Thank you, Dr. Koutras. Thanks to everyone for joining us, and look forward to the next one. We have a few things coming.
So, well, more importantly, to all the winemakers, it's very thoughtful of you to join us, and we know that it's very late. So again, thank you. And absolutely, in about a week, we'll all be in the Mercuri Estate.
We're all going straight to Mercuri Estate. Everyone's sleeping on the beach. That's the right thing to do.
Oh, no, I'm going to sleep actually in the main house, but you can sleep on the beach.
Actually, the beach there has like this crazy like seaweed bed. Isn't that where like Coco Mat started? Like, didn't somebody from Coco Mat get hammered on the beach over there, Labis? Because that's like you sleep on nature. It's one of those things.
If there's a story there, let's hear it.
Well, you know, for me, it's more about like how, you know, Coco Mat, sleep on nature. Is apparently, you know, the whole story behind what that guy did? Apparently got hammered and fell asleep on a beach that had all of the seaweed and thought that that was the best mattress ever. So he decided to make the original Coco Mats out of seaweed.
Oh, okay.
So now you have to get a Coco Mat.
Well, and you could probably wake up and eat the seaweed too in case you're hungover.
Now listen, at that point, you just, you know, go get some sushi. You're fine. I'll sleep on the beach.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. And we look forward to the next part of the wine series event.
Thank you.
To the next part. See you all.
Good night, everyone.
And once again, the packages will still be at Giannone.
Cool.
Oh,
and if not, go to your store and demand they get you wine. Just demand it. That's what we want.
Καληνύχτα σε όλους.
Καληνύχτα, καληνύχτα.
Thank you for joining us.
Okay.